This is Sean Chiplock, and you're listening to Cat with Monocle.
Second episode of Cat with Monocle's podcast. This is your host Seth Hay, and with me today is the voice actor Sean Chiplock. You may have heard of him from Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Secret of Mana Remake, The Legend of Heroes, Trails of Cold 1 and 2, maybe perhaps Persona 5, Fairy Fencer F.
I actually, it just made me really gleeful to talk about or to hear all those names listed because, first of all, hi everyone, it's Sean Chiplock. You may also know me online as Sonic Mega. As he said, I am a professional voiceover artist, and I am really happy that a lot of those titles are mainstream because for the longest time I was so used to people being like, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm a voiceover artist. And they go, oh, what would I have heard you in? And then I proceed to list off like 3 or 4 different titles that no one has ever heard of before. Because it's really funny because online, if you say Danganronpa, like 1 in 3 people will know everything about the series. But if you say Danganronpa out in the real world, people are like, is that Chinese or something? Is that like is that Chinese for manga or something like that? They have no idea. So it's really cool that I can say, hey, I was in Breath of the Wild. And then even if people are like, what's that? Oh, it's that new Nintendo game. Oh, I know Nintendo. Yes, small victories.
But not only that, though, but over the weekend, you've actually had a big announcement, too. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
I am more than... It's fun. Okay, well, I should actually say what it is first. I am more than ecstatic to announce that I voiced Subaru Natsuki, the lead male protagonist role of the upcoming English dub of ReZero, Starting Life in Another World from Zero. And even though it could arguably be said to not be as big, and I just mean in terms of total distribution as Breath of the Wild, it is immensely important to me because what got me into voiceover from the start was seeing Troy Baker in a booth recording for an anime called Trinity Blood. And it was literally anime that made me realize that voiceover was a thing. And since I was 17, since I started, I had always daydreamed about being at the helm of an anime of my own and being the driving force of the story and being the main character that stuff happens to, just taking on that challenge and getting to go through that entire adventure and experience it for myself. And so having this be a reality it's as cliche it is, it's a dream come true.
Now, you've done like a lot of smaller roles. I mean, we talked earlier that you've had little bits and pieces here and there. And there were, some of them were like, Hunter x Hunter was another big one, but, but this, this one you just landed is actually
It's weird because even though my anime portfolio could be said to be very sparse compared to my video game portfolio, I still feel as if all of the roles I had in the past played a part towards being prepared for something as big as this. To give an example, Diabel from Sword Art Online was a comparatively small role. It was 1 episode, but it was still a milestone in that it aired on Toonami. It was my first televised broadcast. It was proof to me that I could be good enough to be part of a production that was broadcast to people like that. Kasim actually has a lot of inspiration towards what I did for Subaru because I forget whether it was episode 16 or 17, Kasim's Answer. There's a scene where he basically has to quote TV tropes, the reason you suck speech towards Alibaba. And it's equal. He has equal parts where he's kind of like depressed and like talking to himself and just kind of moping, and where he's just angry and lashing out and furious. And it was the first time that I had played both sides of that in a character. And I really believe that the scene towards the end of the scene when he just lashes out at Alibaba and he screams, I can be someone different, someone who's sublime. I can be that person. That yell was so crisp and so clean, and I was so proud of it. And there were so many times when I was doing a scene for ReZero, when I was dubbing it, that I told myself I want it to be as crisp and as clean as it was for Magi, because if I can do that for all of these scenes in ReZero, this is going to be a performance worth remembering. It's going to be a performance that people will say was worthy of being compared to the original Japanese. And I know that the original Japanese dub for this anime was well received and did a lot for the actors who performed it.
Oh, right on. Now, correct me if I'm wrong though, but when it comes to voice acting for, let's say, a lot of anime dubs, it's usually you're not in a group to do this. It's usually just individually. And then it's just
yeah, you're pretty much individual.
Yeah.
The only time I really know of in the voiceover industry when you will be recording with a group is if the studio is choosing to do what's called vocap, which is basically motion capture combined with VO, which is still a relatively brand new technology, or if you're doing Western animation / prelay, because with Western animation you're recording first and the animators work around it, same as they used to do for the Disney movies.
Right.
So. With anime, with video games, you are by yourself, and anime can be tough because the only time I get to hear anybody else is if they happened to record before I did. So it can be really... A lot of acting is not just acting, it's reacting. It's playing off what your scene partners have said and responding to the tone in their voice. So when you're basically speaking into a void and always being the one initiating a conversation line after line after line after line, it can be really tough to stay authentic because you have no one to play off. You may have... Do you remember the article where it's talked about Ian McKellen, Lord of the Rings, just kind of having a breakdown because he was essentially acting in front of a green screen and none of his actor friends were sitting around him?
That sounds familiar, but...
Yeah. It's basically the voiceover equivalent of that. It can be really hard not to start doubting yourself when all you hear over the course of a 4-hour session is yourself for 100, 200 lines, and you start thinking like, does this sound real? Am I faking this? Is this how a person normally talks? So it can be daunting, and it takes... It's why anime is considered to be one of the harder mediums to perform for, even though it's also one of the lowest paying forms of voiceover in the industry.
Yeah, and I remember growing up watching anime that trying to watch dubs was a little bit tougher just because so many actors had to try to match in sync with the mouth movements or just
Oh yeah,
script.
it's so much easier now than it used to be, because back then, like 10, 15, 20 years ago, you're talking about they were literally chasing like VHS tape. They were chasing the tape and recording on that, and if they needed to do it again, they just rewound the tape and they just had to make sure they started the right time. Nowadays, with the advent of more modernized digital technology, they still want you to be really close to the lip flaps because you can't really speed up or slow down a line more than 1% to 2% without it sounding really wonky. But as long as you're really close enough, it's much easier to just move the audio file over a couple frames. It's much simpler to line everything up than it used to be.
No, it seems like it has been a lot easier for voice actors to get in sync with characters now than back then. And I agree with it's obviously overseas. It's a lot easier for them because they can record it first and then they just sync it with them. Whereas, here
it becomes especially prevalent during scenes that have if you're just talking conversationally, it's easy enough to pace yourself. But if you're, for example, there's a scene in ReZero where, surprise, surprise, Subaru breaks down crying. And when you think about all the, what's the word? When you think about all the sporadic things that happen with crying, the sniffs, the when you're trying to talk but your throat is clenched up and you can't get the words out, or when your voice kind of warbles because of how sad you feel, you know what I'm talking about. A lot of that you don't control, it just happens. But when you're in a booth and you're recording a character crying, you have to make it real even though you have a very specific time frame to do it in. If the character sniffs, you have to sniff at the same exact time. If they're voice wavers, you have to make it waver at the same time. But you can't make it sound fake because, especially with crying, there's no middle ground. Either it sounds real or it sounds really, really fake.
Right.
So it's difficult. It's really hard.
It's a lot of work for just a to do something that's already been made, and they have to mimic it almost just to get it right. And I think a lot of people have to give a lot of credit to you guys to be able to get it down perfect, and so much work to do it.
I honestly, legitimately think the scenes where I had to be subdued and like quietly, silently, privately crying were exponentially harder than the times where I had to scream at the top of my lungs. Because yeah, when you're screaming, there's just one volume. It's as loud as possible, especially if you're being furious. When you're crying and being quiet to yourself, you have to do all that while also not being so quiet that the mic doesn't pick you up, because then it's a wasted take and you have to do it over again.
Yeah, that would be a little rough, especially if you do 40 minutes of it and didn't realize you record it.
There is nothing more taxing than when you're pushing yourself to tears and you record your take, and then you have to wait like a minute and a half while they put everything together before moving on. But the whole time you have to like keep the tears going. You're just kind of standing there in silence, trying to make sure you're still crying, because you don't want it to go from sounding real to sounding fake,
right,
even though you don't have anything to incentivize you.
And your character that you're doing is a very emotional character too, so it'll be really interesting.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Is that why you're really excited about doing this character?
I am. I've been I've been hosting a miniature Ask Me Anything on Reddit right now, and what I've been telling people is I'm not going to promise you that it's perfect. Like, I'm going to be upfront. This is, again, one of the largest challenges I've ever tackled in my career. Even though I knew I was prepared for it, even though I'd seen the show beforehand, I know that just the sheer amount of work it involved compared to my next biggest project, which probably was Trails of Cold Steel 2, because that was about, I would say, 6 to 8 sessions, full-length sessions. It was so much more work that it's naive to think that there wasn't going to be, a case where maybe a weird read went through, or there was just an off day where I was having a little more trouble than usual getting back into character. But what I tell people is, here's what I can promise. I can promise you that I knew this show inside and out. There wasn't a single time where something was happening in a scene and I was thinking, what's going on here? I'm not familiar with this part of the series. I knew what was going on at all times. I know that every single scene that had any sort of emotional context, I was trying to apply it to moments in my life, or even just my own enthusiasm for the series, to truly emotionally connect to the character. And that there wasn't an ounce of me that wasn't invested there. I knew, similar to when I recorded for Breath of the Wild, there was not a single part of me that was not thinking about how big this show was in Japan and how big it would be for people who were excited about the possibility of it getting a dub, and even just how intense they knew a character like Subaru would be. And I went into the booth with that expectation, with that knowledge, and I told myself, I'm going to give it everything that I've got, even if it destroys me. There's a particular scene in one episode where Subaru he's trapped in a water tornado and he's like glugging water. And I actually should be in trouble for this, because it is not recommended to go as far as like gargling actual water when trying to talk for a take, because you could swallow it the wrong way and end up drowning. And I still did it, because even knowing that it was a bad idea, I still did it, because in my head I thought, if Subaru is gargling water, if all he's doing is breathing in water, I want it to sound like he's breathing in water, and I was willing to take that risk just to make it sound that much more real. So even to the point of doing dangerous stuff, I was willing to make that commitment, and I hope that it shows through in the performance, for better or for worse.
So when is the dub series going to start airing?
It is my understanding that season 1, part 1 is due out sometime in the summer, and that's really all I know. Like my knowledge about the distribution schedule of this series started and ended as far as the recording process went. So what Funimation wants to do regarding a stream or a TV broadcast or a DVD release, I know just as much or as little as the next guy. So,
right. So did you do all your recording already, or are you still working on it?
I'm not sure how I can answer that. I may have already. I know that Mami Okada posted recently on Twitter saying they finished the audio mix for ReZero, and I don't know if that means like season 1, part 1 audio mix, or if that means more than that. So I'm gonna just play it safe and say I can't give a concrete answer to that. Obviously, some stuff has been recorded, the full amount of which I can't say, but I don't have reason to believe they wouldn't do the full series. Does that make sense?
No, that makes sense.
Okay. I just on a personal level, I feel like ReZero is enough of a show or a big enough show that Funimation would not want to just do part of it and then not do the rest of it. So I'm fairly confident the full series is going to end up dubbed.
Right. I think so. I think as well. And just from what I'm hearing about how much intensity you put into this one, I'm comparing it to your other roles in video games. This one's a lot different. I mean, you're just taking snippets of like, here I have to say this part here, and it's not too much acting going. I wouldn't say there's still acting involved, but not as intense and emotionally as in a series like an animation.
I think I was actually lucky in that regard because Subaru has so much involvement in this series, like just on the level of how often he's in the scene that's happening. There were cases where for a given number of episodes, Subaru's total number of lines for just him, was higher than the combined total of every other character in those episodes. So that's a lot. And because of that, it was almost like any time that I recorded the episode, it was just basically like watching the episode all over again because there wasn't really a lot of hop skipping around like, okay, we're done with this scene and now we're going to jump to like 5 minutes later. It was like, all right, we're done with this line. Now the next scene or the next time that he speaks is less than 15 seconds away from here. So being able to go through it chronologically all over again made it not as difficult to keep pace with what was happening scene by scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So with that so we're going to go into...
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about Ys 8.
Lacrimosa of Dana.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, there was a re-recording on the voices. They went back and they redid the translation, and now I know a lot of this doesn't really happen very often. I was quite surprised that this was called out for, and so I actually applaud NIS America to actually come back and say we're going to redo this right and do it correctly. Yeah. Now, were you kind of worried that you weren't going to get the part back for Hamel, or?
So okay. I wouldn't say that I was worried. Like, obviously, I would love to come back and reprise the character, but I also acknowledge that nothing in this industry is ever guaranteed. Like, with the Powerpuff Girls reboot, the original voice actresses weren't invited back. With Metal Gear Solid 5, David Hayter didn't return as Snake.
True.
So it's never a guarantee that you'll return as character. Like, even though people have been like, we can't wait to hear you as Reen in Cold Steel 3, even though I voiced him in 1 and 2, there's no part of me that's saying, oh, it's a shoo-in that I'm going to get to voice Reen in 3. You just don't know. So I don't let it bother me, and I don't think about it, because if it happens, it's going to happen, and if it doesn't, there wasn't really anything I could do to force it to. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense.
What I was worried about was if I'd be able to do the same voice, because when I first recorded for Ys 8, I actually was still getting over a fever that I had contracted. I had flown out to, I think, like Indiana or something like that for my brother-in-law's wedding. And flown back, and I caught something on the way back. So my voice it wasn't like terrible, but it had like that kind of I'm still recovering from a cold raspiness to it. Mm-hmm. And it actually worked really well for Hummel, because Hummel is like really quiet and he keeps to himself, and he's got a kind of like that edgelord personality to him. So having that rasp allowed me I was still able to talk in a higher register in my younger pitch, but still have that kind of like cool Steve Bloom, badass sort of grunge to it. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And it came at a cost. Like, by the time I was done with that session, I had actually completely destroyed my throat, and it took 2 weeks for it to fully recover. But it sounded good as a result of it. Like, I knew it wasn't a voice that would have been easy to do when I was well, and that's why they tell you don't record when you're sick, because it's a completely different sound from when you're healthy.
Yeah.
So I was really scared that when I came back, it wasn't like I was going to be sick again, and that I wasn't going to be able to properly replicate that grunge, that gravel that Hummel had. But I think I managed to pull it off. I think when I came back, now that I knew the character better, since I'd literally gone through all of his lines and I really knew more about his motivation and his background, I was able to just pull it back and let my voice fall closer into my throat and just let more of the vibration of pushing it into my throat, having all the air come from my trachea rather than in my head. Let that do the vibrato for me, and I think I was able to successfully replicate that mysterious side to him, despite not being sick to my guts. But I'm grateful that I was invited back, but more so I was grateful that I was able to keep faithful to the voice that I'd done the first time around.
Nice. And I can understand that how when you have a different voice to it unexpectedly like that with a cold.
Consistency is huge in this industry.
Yeah.
I'm not going to jump back to ReZero for very long, but just like keeping consistent of a character voice for 25 episodes, even just for a re-recording of an East video game, I didn't want it to be a sudden change where people said, "Oh, I liked this better the first time around. Why is it worse?" So I was very, very focused on giving them the same quality of last time, just with the new content.
Was it much of a difference on Ys 8 compared to the different translations that you adjusted? Do you recall?
You mean, like, did I notice an obvious difference in the text?
Yeah.
Not really, but that's just because when you keep busy, you don't really have the time or the memory space to remember exactly what you said at the session. In fact, a lot of actors joke that if you honestly don't remember what was happening, then you probably did a good job, because it means you were out of your head and doing, becoming the character instead of being yourself performing the character. And it means you weren't like deliberate or overthinking every single line and practicing it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So no, I didn't really. It just felt like I was coming in for the first time, and I just maybe there were some scenes that I recognized for specific events, but otherwise it was just, hey, here's Hummel and here's what he says, so do your thing.
Okay, well that's actually not a bad way to think of it too. Just come in as if you are the character. And
it also helps because with video games, you typically don't actually see the scenes where it's happening. Like with anime, I'm seeing the stuff on screen. So if I see what's happening, I'm going to remember what these characters said at this point in time. But when you're recording for a video game, you just see a crap load of lines, sometimes just you, sometimes the whole scene with all the characters talking, but you don't have a visual to put to it. So it's very, very difficult to remember at what part of the game this occurs in.
Yeah, especially with a lot of the role-playing games for Japan, there are a lot more stills and illustrated, so the only thing they change is the visual appearances. Like some look like they're angry, they're sad, different emotions, and I'm surprised you don't really see that when you record.
I remember a funny occasion recording for Trails of Cold Steel 2 where the entire page in front of me on the projector was just 12 different lines of ... That's what the line said, was ... and the line below that said ... and the line below that said ... because they were all different versions of speechlessness. There was the pondering, there was the surprised, there was the despondent sigh, just kind of like just all these different facets, but you can't really put words to them on the script. You have to describe it at the session. So I got to take a photo. It's just like, in today's studio session, and it's not even words. It's just ... all down the page.
And they tell you right up front, like, how they wanted it to sound, right?
Right. They'll give you the emotional context, but you don't know where in the game these are going to be used.
Right. They just need the piece so they can plug it into the game.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Literally, that you are doing exactly what I was doing in the studio.
Well, maybe I should jump into voice acting right now.
Maybe you should.
I don't know. Maybe I should just retire right now.
It was the shortest known career of any man to date.
I hope I get an award for this sometime soon. So, you've worked with Square Enix recently, and you work with Nintendo. Any big differences between the two companies in recording?
Surprisingly, it's anticlimactic because the answer to that is anticlimactic because when we say we worked with Square Enix or we worked with Nintendo, it's not to the degree of, hey, I went into Nintendo's HQ and met Reggie Fils-Aimé and recorded in this booth with like the studio head and like Miyamoto watching me and guiding me. No, it was, hey, Formosa or Bang Zoom said you got cast for this role, and I showed up, and they had one or two representatives from the company just to make sure that everything was on spec and that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. But otherwise, it was me and the same old director, the same old sound engineer, and we're just doing our thing. So, yeah, we don't get nearly as involved with the company as people think. I imagine if it's like a huge company like Disney, that they are going to have you come to their place, their headquarters, their studio, and they're going to direct you every step of the way because this is a like multi-billion-dollar branding that you are representing. But for a single game, for a smaller company like that, comparatively, it's generally just the same routine, different people.
Right. Right. Just go to the studio, give me the recording, send it over. Okay, we're good.
Yep.
Easy peasy, I guess.
I know. It's not very exciting, but it just feeds into the quote of you have to be in this for the love of it, not for the fame, because it's the actual process isn't all that special. It's I came here to do my job.
Right. And that's the thing, though. That's why I think a lot of people need to know that is, everybody thinks, oh, it's it's Nintendo. Oh, it's Square Enix. That's this. You must have flown out there to do recording, and you just said, no, not really.
Nope. I mean, that's why I have to live here. If you want to do the work, you have to be where the work is. If I were still living in Michigan, I would not have had any of these opportunities because there's already hundreds of talent in the area who all want to do this sort of thing. And I'm not going to kid myself. There's probably plenty of people who have a similar voice range to me who the company would just be as happy using. So, for example, there were people who were kind of in a tiff because like the recording group for the game Danganronpa was not the same as the recording cast for the anime of Danganronpa.
Yeah.
And that's just because Funimation got the licensing rights to the animation. It's like Funimation's not going to want to fly people out from Los Angeles. I mean, if they're really big celebrities like Bryce Papenbrook or Todd Haberkorn or Vic Mignogna, then yeah, maybe for the star power they want to do that. But just in general, if they do it, if Texas gets the rights, they're going to want to use Texas talent. It's just easier on everybody. It's less money. They don't have to fly everyone out. Everyone's local. They can drive to the studio. It's common sense.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's budget wise. I can get somebody local to do the same thing that somebody in California can do.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of which, I know just dabbing into the a lot of the community kind of going on with voice actors, and it's interesting to see that you guys somewhat talk to each other through social media, but yet not, you don't really talk too much, like, hey, I know you from, doing Secret of Mana or whatnot, but
are you saying are you saying in regards to talking between colleagues or from fans to professionals?
No, different colleagues.
Okay. Sorry, clarify for me. I guess I was.
So, like, for example, like, you've talked to other colleagues, that you've worked with. Well, I wouldn't say work with because you guys end up doing your own voices at separate times.
Right.
But you recognize each other through social media. Now, you don't really talk to each other, at the studio or somewhere or anywhere outside social media.
Yeah, definitely not. Like I said, unless it's Western prelay animation, we are always typically recording on our own, and all we hear of each other's work is what happens to maybe already have been recorded in the scene that we're now working on. Part of the pain of waiting for ReZero to release is I want to know how everyone sounds put together. Like, if I can feel that good about certain scenes that I did in terms of performing as Subaru, it makes me excited to think like, well, what's it going to sound like when everybody's in there? But I don't know. I don't know what anyone else sounded like when they performed, and I'm not going to know until it's live. And so it can be really limiting because it's really hard to get excited over a show or a game when I say to get excited, I mean like in conversations that we have privately between when we've recorded and when the project actually releases, when it goes public. But there's not much that you can say when nobody knows what it sounds like,
Right.
And so, and as I might have said previously, because there's not much to say, I've always had this mentality of, unless you have a good reason to be talking to someone, they've probably got their own stuff to focus on. They're either working on a workshop or practicing their craft, or maybe they're working on another project. It's not really worth taking up their time out of their schedule with idle conversation. So I typically tend to keep to myself. It's a different story with fans, because fans want to talk about stuff that you've been in the past. Maybe it's different with colleagues, because colleagues, they want to push for the future. They want to work on new stuff. They want to talk about stuff that they're actively working on. I'm still cool with like talking about my role as Diabel and Sword Art Online, but that was a long time ago. I've gotten better. I've improved. So I'm more than happy to geek out about it with fans. But with colleagues, it's just sort of, we want to support each other in the present. We want to help each other focus on the now and the new opportunities that are coming in. And it doesn't really leave a lot of room to constantly reflect on the past.
Right. And I've noticed that you've talked to, once in a while you'll talk to, Kira Buckland, or I think once in a while Tom Boyer and
Tom Bauer.
That is, I'm butchering their last name.
It's fine.
I apologize. And then Joe, I think it's Joe Hernandez.
Joe Hernandez, yes. He was actually a closer colleague than usual, because for a period of about 4 or 5 months, I actually worked at California Adventure over at Disneyland as a member of the Turtle Talk crew. And Joe Hernandez and Tom Bauer actually were also members there. So I interacted with them on a near daily basis. But yeah. So even like with Joe, the fact that we were on Breath of the Wild together, which was a huge role, it's cool, and we like to interact with fans as a group in that context. But I don't really think we've spent a lot of time talking privately to each other about it.
Right.
So it's just the way things are. I'm not mad about it. I'm not bitter about it, and I'm not like I don't wish that there were more opportunities. It's just how things are. No,
it's totally understandable. I mean, you kind of have your own life you got to take care of. So, I mean, so does everybody else.
Yep.
Now, I can tell you're really interactive with the fans, especially with their own, crafted items and whatnot. Like, for example, Christine Gonna Chris done, custom amiibos, and then she's, doing a few other things you've inquired her about. And then there's other, plushes and I don't know if you ever seen a blanket or something, but
like a custom-made blanket.
Yeah, that'd be interesting, wouldn't it?
I don't think it's gone that far, but I wouldn't put it. I would not put it past someone to be doing that. I know that there's someone who's doing like. Actually, no. I think there's someone either doing like custom blankets or kind of like half blankets, like napping blankets or something like that. Or maybe it was handkerchiefs. I don't remember. But you name an item, and I guarantee you someone is doing custom orders of it.
Probably like a Rivali of a blanket. We should probably find this out after the recording.
I know.
I'm interested to see if there is one.
I feel like the Rivali blanket would be too thin, though. It would feel like I was just wrapping myself in a ghost.
It doesn't have to be Rivali. It could be any of the other characters. Maybe it's Hamill.
Cass blanket. Nice and warm and snuggly.
There you go. Now, because you're from Michigan, so am I, and you grew up in Saginaw, graduated from Western Michigan University, right around the Kalamazoo area. For those
you stalker.
Oh, I know, right? I'm just trying to do my homework, sir. And then you've moved out to California to pursue your career. The transition from going from Michigan to California, how tough was that?
So, I feel like it might have been easier for me than most. The reason being because I had kind of already known what I wanted to do by the time I went into college, so I was able to direct all my focus onto that. And because I tend to be a lone wolf, and I spend a lot of time entertaining myself rather than relying on others, I was able to direct more focus onto building my freelance career. So by the time I left college, I had kind of already gotten used to doing freelance orders, and I had saved up money, and I was grateful enough to have my own car and have all of my college expenses paid off. So when I moved out to California, I didn't have anything draining my funds. I was able to focus it all into affording rent and affording workshops and stuff like that. And again, keeping to myself a lot also meant that I had online friends, which wasn't going to suddenly change by moving to California. They were still going to be available online, and I was more easily able to just set my sights on establishing myself in this new state, in this new industry. I don't want to say it like, I'm not trying to be mean when I say this, but I'm kind of glad I didn't have a lot of very deep ties in Michigan, just because it didn't lead to a feeling of loneliness when I went to California.
Yeah.
It was lonely at first just because I needed to start from scratch and make new connections, but the impact wasn't as hard as I imagine it might be for some people.
Right.
And I'm still grateful that in the time that I've been here that I have made new relationships, and I've made incredibly fruitful and meaningful relationships, not just with colleagues, but with friends who don't actively follow what I do, but know what I do and support it. So yeah, it was just as stressful as anything else. Maybe it was a little bit easier in terms of finances, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I still had to put in a lot of work. I actually think I don't give myself enough credit sometimes. I like to assume that I had things too easy, if that makes sense, like that I didn't struggle as much as people are supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact remains that you don't book the roles you don't audition for. You have to go to the workshops to network with the clients. You still have to actually perform the role and do a good job, because no amount of sound editing can fix a bad performance or a bad delivery. So
Right.
yeah, it's the output the end result is still the same. I still have to put in the time. I still have to put in the effort. I still have to be consistent, and it's no different now than it was when I first moved out. The only difference now is that I have more clients and more opportunities to audition, which means I have to apply what I've learned more frequently.
Now, I saw some clip of you at Anime Expo.
Mm-hmm.
Was this before or after you moved out from Michigan?
For the AX Idol competition?
Yeah.
That was right after my freshman year of college. And so when I won, it was actually the first time I had ever been at an anime convention, period. And when I won, obviously Bang Zoom was like, hey, let us know when you're going to be in the area so that we can do your general demo and like we can give you a tour of the studio. And I had to tell them, hey, I've still got 3 years to finish college before I'm going to be moving out. And it led to me having at the time, it was serious discussion about, Bang Zoom wants to know when I'm going to be in the area. This is the first time that I've done something like performing for an anime. This is everything I've dreamed for, and now it's right in front of me. Should I stop my college education and just chase this? Should I take the risk and go out there? And what ultimately led to me choosing to stay and finish college was mostly the fact that I had a very nice scholarship paying for well over 50% of my total expenses there. And there was literally no way I would ever get that scholarship back if I went back at a later date. Mm-hmm. So I really did want to make good on this sudden connection, on this sudden interest, but I elected to finish my education and get the degree. I told myself, once you get to the degree, you never have to worry about it again, versus, always wondering, should I go back and finish this? Should I have gone back and done it? When should I make the time for this? Am I going to have to start all over? Like, are any of my credits going to transfer?
Right.
And now that I'm deeper in the industry, it's kind of like, wow, what I honestly feel like if I had chased the audition with Bang Zoom at that time, I would have severely regretted it. Not because, just because in the grand scheme of things, and I'm not saying this to discredit any company, but a single general demo or an anime project in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge deal. It's, my legacy right now as a voiceover artist is a culmination of my entire body of work and all the clients that I've worked for, and not just a single job. Like, even ReZero is not going to be the make or break of my career, mm-hmm. even though it could certainly help it. So to have thrown away my college progress for the sake of what may have likely just been, a background role in an upcoming anime would have been a very naive decision. And I am glad that I chose to finish my education, because when I moved out to California, the company was still there. And as long as I was still practicing and improving myself, it's not like I wasn't going to have another chance to perform for them, because if you're good enough, they'll notice. So
Yeah, sometimes it seems like having a piece of paper seems to help at times. Or
That's debatable. I
is
still
it?
don't know like how useful the degree has been. I don't know if it's directly had any impact on my career, but I will say that not having to think about it is a relief. It's one less thing on my mind.
Mhm.
And I am grateful for the classes I got to take as a result of it. Like even, my experience with the Japanese minor obviously helped with understanding honorifics and the syllables and stuff like that. My psychology minor was extremely helpful in understanding myself as a person and just how people as individuals work, because no matter what industry you're in, voiceover or something else,
Mhm.
you're going to have to work with other people. And if you don't know how to work with other people, you're going to have a really hard time getting anywhere.
No, I thought about communication as well.
Yes. I have mixed feelings on the aspect of communication in the voiceover industry. I am so grateful for my colleagues and I'm so grateful for the opportunities, but I can't help but feel like there's parts of this industry that never really went past the high school gossip phase.
Hmm.
And I feel like there are a lot of cases where feuds between actors or just any of this drama that happens comes about as a result of two things. It comes about of one, obviously the initial miscommunication, but more importantly, two, this resistance to talking things out like adults. I notice that there's a lot of cases where people feel slighted or offended by something another actor or a client did or something they said, but they never really talk to the person that offended them. They don't make the effort to go and say, "Hey, I wanted you to know that what you did or what you said really didn't sit well with me, and I wanted you to acknowledge that and apologize." And I feel like that's the crux of it. It's hard for me to get into this. Like I don't want to disparage anyone, but I really feel like there needs to be a more mature approach in this industry. And I feel like so many petty problems would be solved if people just took responsibility for when they did something that was less than professional. But more importantly, if people would bother to approach them when they did something that was less than professional. I know for a fact that there's people in this industry who don't think very highly of me. And to this day, I don't know why. And I have guesses as to why, but it's not like I can approach them and ask because they'd want nothing to do with me. And there's no way I'll know for sure if they don't come to me and tell me. And I'd be the first person to apologize and say, "Hey, I had no idea that what I did or what I said affected you in that way. I'm really sorry, but I can't do anything if I'm not made aware of it." And it feels like there's a lot of people who would rather just hold grudges and assume that the person didn't say anything or didn't apologize because they don't care, rather than just simply not knowing. So I hope that changes. I want that to change, and I want to be an example of a person that is, willing to be accountable when he does something that people are unsure about, but also can actually go to peers and let them know when he's worried about something they did without worrying about burning a bridge in the network because everyone's supposed to play nice and they all have to say nice things about each other and ignore the bad moments that happen.
No, and I think just even, like that kind of reminds me of, when you said, burning bridges to kind of keep, you obviously want to keep a good connection with everyone. But I mean, there's times where you're not going to get along with somebody, but it doesn't mean you can't just be, I don't know, maybe have to burn the bridge or not talk to you at all. I mean,
I understand why people are afraid, is because everyone knows everybody else in this industry. And if you speak out against someone, you don't know how they're going to respond to that. You don't know if they're going to just take it as if this person's going to call me out, then I want nothing to do with them. And I'm going to make sure none of my friends want to work with them either. And that fear of standing up or saying something and then effectively locking yourself out of future work opportunities because of it's mortifying. It's terrifying. And I think it plays a big role into why a lot of people keep silent. And
right.
I hate that feeling. I hate it so much.
Well, especially if you can work it out. And then not only that, though, but if you take it, if it ends up getting somewhere, this is where social media kind of becomes a little dangerous, is when you bring it online, like say Twitter or anywhere, you're going to get more and more people involved with
I've
it.
had people say to my face, I'm not going to name names, but there was one time when I actually went to a person and said, hey, I don't want to make a public deal out of this, but I just want you to know that I'm kind of worried about how you handled this situation, and I'd really appreciate it if you could clear it up so that people don't interpret it the wrong way and think that I'm a bad person because of something I never did.
Mm-hmm.
And their response to me was, what other people think of you is none of your concern.
All right.
Like, how are you supposed to respond to that?
That is a very good question. It's like, okay, well, tally-ho, I guess.
Literally, like, to this day, I haven't responded to that because I don't know what you're supposed to say. Like, again, the fear plays into that. If I were to go online and say, hey, I want to clear up the situation because I feel like this person handled it really unprofessionally, now I'm opening this big can of worms that no one cared about in the first place. Am I going to just come off looking like an entitled whiny brat? So
yeah, I think
it's rough.
I think maybe in those kind of times, you just, I think you just wait,
all you can do is focus on being the best person that you can be, so that if people hear certain stories about you, that they have other stories to bring up and be like, well, that seems strange for him because I heard that he also did this and it doesn't seem like him to be that way. So I just don't have the time. No one has the time and energy to focus on defending themselves against the negative. All they can do is be accountable for the stuff that's true and otherwise focus on being the best person that they can be.
Right. No, I agree. So we're going to
Sorry, I didn't mean to make a 15-minute conversation on a really dark and negative aspect of the industry.
No, it's okay. I mean, I think it's good for people to kind of get a taste of voice acting, and
I think it's important for it to be acknowledged. I think as uncomfortable. I think the sheer fact of because it's uncomfortable is why it needs to be discussed, because it's a fact. It's a part of the industry, and part of being successful in this industry is knowing how to carefully navigate it without putting your career in jeopardy over it. And it's one of those hidden struggles that people don't recognize that they're going to have to deal with. So, yeah.
No, I mean, there's always going to be a touchy subject, in a conversation. I mean, it's gonna pop up. It's gonna happen. But that's the beauty of it, is that...
Yeah, so moving on.
And moving on to the next thing. So, you are a huge Mega Man fan. I assume you saw Mega Man 11.
Tim Curry laugh.
Yeah. So I assume you saw the new Mega Man 11 trailer for this.
God. So, okay.
Your thoughts on that?
So I'm like anybody else. I'm side-eyeing it with wary enthusiasm because you never know. Like trailers and demos are way easier to make look pretty than the actual polished game.
Square can tell you that.
I know of three things. One, it's a new Mega Man game, and I'm glad that he still exists. Two, the interviews that I've seen of the creative team, I genuinely feel like they actually care about who Mega Man is as an icon and as a character, and that's kind of what's giving me faith. And three, that trailer music was bomb-ass amazing.
Oh, I know. I know you were asking for it. You were asking
Network Transmission. Network Transmission for the GameCube was a game that not many people remember, but it had really good music tracks and possibly like one of the most exciting, adventurous, invigorating internet themes that I'd ever, like the general overworld theme when you go into the internet in the like the LAN, AC/DC, whatever area. It was fun, and I loved listening to it, and it was peppy and hype and technological. And that's something I've always cherished about Mega Man games. It's just how interesting they can be. The Battle Network series is what introduced me to the concept of dissonant tones, notes or musical elements that don't play from both sides of the speakers at the same time. They may switch between left and right. And it drove me nuts in the best way. It was so cool, like just hearing, these notes like switching in between the left and right speakers and moving around in your head, so to speak. So getting back to Mega Man 11, feeling that way about the music made me enthusiastic for the potential that the whole soundtrack could be like this. Because Mega Man started as much as a music showcase as it was a game. From the thematic elements from rock and roll and bass and treble to just how the early games defined themselves, music was an integral part. And to feel that good about the music from just the trailer gives me a lot of hope for the full game.
Right, and it seems like they're actually listening and wanting to make it at least a good game. Ever since it's been such a long absence, and then it came out to Smash Brothers, and everybody.
It doesn't have to be groundbreaking. It just has to be fun.
Yeah.
I don't need all of these new mechanics, and I'm not going to be bothered if they do include the mechanics. I'm just saying I don't need them. I don't need like all these fancy boss gimmicks. Just make it fun for me to play, and that's all I need.
And that's what Sonic Mania, when that came out, I was really upset about that.
It was fun gameplay and heartfelt references.
Yes.
That's at its core. That's what it was. It was fun callbacks to old stuff without just being the same old. And it was love. It was a game made out of love, and people loved it because of that.
Oh yeah, and now seeing hopefully with Mega Man, we're living back in the 90s. Which
that's really what will define it, is whether it's a game made to impress or a game made to entertain. If they make it to give it fancy graphics and try and make it look visually impressive, it's just the show is gonna wear off once people actually play it. Because when you're playing it, you're not really looking at the backgrounds. You're not looking at like the gleam of the metal off of the character's chassis. You're just playing a game. And if the game is fun, that's what you're going to remember. Crystal Chronicles hasn't aged that well, but people still love it because of the co-op aspect and just the sense of adventure. They don't think about the quality, they think about the memory. Right.
No, I totally agree. So, top 3 Mega Man games.
Mega Man Battle Network 3, doesn't matter which version, Mega Man Legends / Mega Man 64, and those first 2 are obvious. I gotta think of the third one. I don't know. Give me a second, because I wasn't really big on the X series, or I hadn't played enough of the X series for it to matter. You know what? I would say Network Transmission.
Okay.
So Mega Man Battle Network 3 is because I made an extensive post on Tumblr ranking each of the Battle Network games, but Network 3 was really where everything reached an apex. It was by number 2, they had introduced new concepts and they'd improved on ones from the first game of the series, which you can't crap on the first game so much because they were making something brand new for its time. They were going with a brand new battle mechanic. They were trying something new, and even though there was stuff that could be abused or flaws in the system, to come up with that from scratch is still really respectable. But by 3, they had refined these mechanics. They had perfected the stuff from number 1 and further refined the new mechanics from number 2 to something that just made sense in 3. And between the mechanics, the post game, the side quests, the atmosphere, the story in general, Battle Network 3 truly felt like they had finished grasping what a modern day internet focused Mega Man game would be like and what its story would be like, and they just ran with it and it became its own entity. And I feel like after that point, 4, 5, and 6, they tried different stories and they tried different mechanics and they tried different gimmicks to keep it fresh, but it was 3 where everything just came together and it existed. Does that make sense?
No, I think it does. And
it wasn't there to represent a brand. It wasn't there to showcase a new idea. It was just a game, and it was a game that did so much right. And it was, for people who had been veterans, it was a nice experience of everything coming together after being refined. And for newcomers to the series, it was in depth without being overwhelming, and that's why it's special to me.
And that's what reminded me of, because I grew up a lot with the X series, and I remember playing the first one until there was nothing left, and the second and third one were great, but then I played 4 mostly, but then after that it started to trail off just because of the direction they were going with, and I think I can kind of, I don't know why. I mean, it's just what they were trying to do. It just, like, it was a cut and paste. Let's try make them in 3D. Let's try, I don't know how many times you have Sigma back.
Right.
So it got a little old and dried pretty quick after 4.
Just 3 had so much going for it. It had the refined mechanics. It had an incredible soundtrack. It had it had an extensive post game so that you had stuff to work towards. It was just a thorough experience. Like, by the time you're done with it and done with everything in the game, you put it down, you close your eyes, and you go, "That was an experience. That's gonna stay with me." So that's why that's my number 1. Mega Man 64. There's a couple different reasons why it's important to me. Maybe it wasn't as perfect as Mega Man Battle Network, but for its time, like for the era in which that game came out, the voiceover performances in it were great. You know, sure, they had an anime quality to it, but for a game like that, you know, anime enthusiasm or anime exaggeration is kind of okay. And the cast were like so immersed in their characters, and I'm extremely picky about who voices Mega Man. I'm so grateful that we've had people like Mark Gatha for Mega Man X and Corey Sevier. I don't know if it's Sevier or Seaver or whatever, but Corey brought an authentic, young, confident but innocent tone to Mega Man Volnut that just worked. It worked so well, and I remember Juno, the final boss. Juno was the first example of a villain who was clearly, you know, had big aspirations, obviously had a very not okay worldview, like I need to eradicate, you know, these life forms so that the island doesn't get overpopulated, but he wasn't shouty about it. He was always calm and methodical and just concrete in his decisions. He didn't go off on a rampage, and hearing that creepy calmness was brand new to me. I'd never heard anything like it before. It wasn't your Saturday morning bombastic Robotnik style delivery. It was this guy knows what he's going to do, and if I don't stop him, he's going to kill everyone, and that was scary. And hearing, especially when he went into, are you familiar? Did you play through Mega Man Legends?
I only played part of it, and my younger brother actually really enjoyed it. So I would always watch him playing it.
Hearing such a calm voice become attached to a giant hulking robot with arms bigger than your entire body is terrifying. It's terrifying. So just the voice cast in that was surprisingly good. Obviously, having Mega Man in 3D was an adventure. It was a good memory. It was, and now that I'm a voiceover artist, I have even more reasons to be attached to it. And then Mega Man Network Transmission is just filling in the third slide. It's not nearly as extensive, but great soundtrack. I really liked seeing all the battle chips from the Battle Network series be transferred into 3D versions. Maybe it wasn't like a super polished game, and it was definitely like a fill-in game in between entries of the series, but it was still fun. I still enjoyed it, and sometimes saying this game is number 3 just because I had a lot of fun playing it, that's all you need.
Yeah, and you don't, and I mean, with a lot of the work you've been doing, I mean, you don't have a lot of time to even play anything new or even go back.
I have such a huge backlog.
Yeah.
I'm a crazy big fan of Demon Gaze, and when I learned that Demon Gaze 2 was going to be localized, I was so enthusiastic. But by the time Demon Gaze 2 came out, I couldn't play it right away because I had to finish what was it I was going to play before Demon Gaze 2? I don't remember, but it was like I couldn't play Demon Gaze 2 until I beat Monster Hunter Stories. But I couldn't finish Monster Hunter Stories because I was working on another game at the time. So after I beat that, maybe it was like Operation Babel or something like that. So I finished Monster Hunter Stories, and then I finally finished Demon Gaze 2. So now I'm allowed to finally play Etrian Odyssey 5 almost 5 months after it came out. But after I finish Etrian Odyssey 5, I've got Mary Skelter waiting because I want to play a dungeon crawler that I actually voiced in, since that's been a dream of mine. And then after Mary Skelter comes Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Sky, because I can't start Super Mystery Dungeon until I finish the post game. And then I want to do the Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga remake that came out. My backlog is like 5 or 6 games long, and it just keeps getting added to.
No, I completely understand that. That's like that. I'm looking at my library now. I'm like, I'm shaking my head. Like, I don't know how I'm going to get to these. And you said Mary. It's interesting you say Mary Skelter, because I did remember playing that, and I just saw that they were going to make a sequel to that.
Are they?
Yes. I was reading a feed last night, and it says it looks like it's going to be happening. I think it's going to be for the PS4.
Okay.
As far as I know, there was going to be more announcements later on.
Well, I'm super happy to hear that. Hopefully, I enjoy the original game.
I played about halfway through, and it was actually pretty fun.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what to expect because, like, obviously, I love the Etrian Odyssey series. I love the skill trees, and I love the way the battle mechanics work. I thought I would be able to enjoy Persona Q because it was Etrian Odyssey meets Persona, but I didn't because the dungeon crawling was Etrian Odyssey-esque, but the character building and skill building was very, very Persona, and I couldn't be enthusiastic about the way the demon fusing in that works. So if Mary Skelter is kind of similar, where it really depends on how the character growth works. If they learn skills at certain levels, or if there's a skill tree of something like that, I'll probably have fun. But I feel like how the battle system works and how the character leveling system works is going to play a big part in whether or not I'm able to stay enthusiastic about the game.
No, and I'd agree with that. That's why when I think of games like Final Fantasy Tactics, I had a lot of fun with that because I could get all these different classes. I could level them up. They can learn certain things. And I would go after the summoner like early in the first chapter just because I wanted to get summon Bahamut, right at the get-go in the first and just beat the crap out of it. But Mary Skelter, thinking back, I know like you could change, like there's different classes and so their outfits changes. There's, weapon upgrades. I can't remember if there was like certain skills you learn as you go. I think there was. And you can equip them. But I do remember that when you gain enough, I can't remember exactly what it was. Like I said, it's been a while. Do, the different classes, the different outfits, and just what I liked about it a lot was just the names they were using. Like there's Snow White, there was Rapunzel. Oh yeah. That was a really interesting twist on how they did that.
So yeah, I'm excited to try it out when the time comes.
I'm sure you've been. I know. I was looking at your website, and you had a, just for fun, Sora.
Wait, you mean like the Kingdom Hearts audio thing that I did?
Yep.
Shout outs to Seungwon Cho because he definitely did something similar to that first. But
oh yeah.
Yeah. I got inspiration from him, even though what I did was its own unique thing. I didn't just rip the script off of him, but I'm not. I know my wife is excited for Kingdom Hearts 3, but I have not touched the series at all. Is that something you would end up getting into, or you're just gonna watch? If I had the time. The problem is, like, people are like, "What did you think when you played through Breath of the Wild?" And I have to tell them, I haven't even touched Breath of the Wild. Like, I have the Master Edition of the Master Edition box, the special super special edition, and I haven't opened it because the reason why I have such a big backlog is around Twilight Princess is when I started starting games and then not finishing them, and I told myself that had to stop. So I said I am not going to start a game unless I'm ready to commit to finishing it, and I'm not going to start a new game until I finish the previous one. So, like, since I started Etrian Odyssey 5, that has been the only game that I have played. I mean, I'll do, like, Smash Wi-Fi just for fun, but in terms of, like, playing through a game for the story, Etrian 5 has been the only game that I've played for the last 2 or 3 weeks. And I'm close to being done. I'm in the post-game, I'm in the final stratum, I'm working towards the final super boss, but until I am done, 100% done with that game, I'm not going to move on to the next one. And when you take a mentality like that and you apply it to something like Breath of the Wild,
good luck.
maybe I'm not going to go for all 900 Korok seeds. I don't care about that. Right. But I am definitely someone who enjoys tackling a challenge and figuring out how to overcome it and getting that dopamine reward for figuring out a solution, even if it wasn't the intended one. And so the idea of having 120 plus shrines with their own puzzles to overcome independently, separate from the main story itself,
yeah.
There's no way.
No.
There's no way.
That's why you see. I think that's why you don't see a lot of people really quite beating it fast enough, unless they're.
I'll sit in on a stream and I'll commentate and I'll enjoy you going through the shrines with you, but I don't think there's a lifetime in my life that I'm going to be able to tackle that game. And it sucks because I feel like I need to experience Breath of the Wild. I know in my heart that it's a game that everyone playing it has their own experience, has their own adventure to take out of it, and I want that for myself. But God, the commitment. Because the reason why I'm scared, there's a game that I love called Jade Cocoon 2. And we could have an entire separate hour-long discussion about Jade Cocoon 2 because it's such a diamond in the rough that no one I talk to ever knows anything about it, and I don't have the time to explain it. But Jade Cocoon 2 is a game that I would spend entire hours on a laptop just planning out the order of skill fusions and monsters and how I was going to build my team all the way down to the very, very, very end game. And I would play it, and I would play it for 60 hours. I would play it for so long that the save file timer would max out, and it wouldn't go any higher, even though it would continue to save your game. And 3 times in a row, over the course of how many times I played that game, I would play it, and then I would get distracted by something, whether it was midterms or another game or something else, and I'd come back, and I'd have no clue where I was or what I was doing. I would have no idea how far along I was. I wouldn't know what my next itinerary was, what my goal was. I'd forget. And when I forget and I don't know where to continue, I don't want to mess up, so I'd start over.
Oh, man.
I started that game from scratch 4 separate times before I finally found the time to commit to it to finish it all the way through. And I remember when I finally beat it, when I beat like the final tournament guy and the credits started rolling, and I thought to myself, I'm done. It's over. I've beaten the game. I did it. I'm free. So, I do not want that to happen with Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, you're gonna end up doing that.
God, no. I'm afraid. I'm scared. It is not a game that I can start over from scratch after getting 75% of the way through. So help me, God.
Then start all over.
No. No. You cannot make me return by death on that game. I refuse.
Go through all the seeds again. So, with Mega Man versus Sonic the Hedgehog.
It's Mega Man. Sorry. It's Mega Man. Sorry. You mean like in an actual fight?
Yeah, an actual fight.
Is Supersonic allowed, or is it just what
if you do Supersonic,
weapon access do they have access to?
For right now, let's say normal. They got nothing.
Just normal? So Mega Man doesn't have any of his robot master powers?
No, we're going to leave it right there for right now, and we'll go to the next step.
Alright. Absolutely neutral. Mega Man wins. If you can beat someone like Flashman or someone who's able to freeze time or go at super speed just through careful planning, I think he's capable of pulling it off. I know that's going to be difficult because all he has are his lemons, but we also know that the lemons in some games don't have a set distance. They just go forever. Mm-hmm. And if you can just spray enough of them, it doesn't matter how fast he is. You're going to hit him eventually.
Okay, let's add this. So, with the power-ups.
To power to the extent of Supersonic?
Yes.
If Sonic has access to Supersonic, it's over. Mega Man doesn't have anything equivalent. Like, sure, maybe he has his armor in the X series where he can do the Hadouken that's an instant kill, or he has shields that can protect himself, but he doesn't have anything that makes him straight up invincible. And if you combine Supersonic speed with his invulnerability with his power, it's. I'm not gonna say, well, maybe there's a chance that Mega Man can eat it. Nope, he's dead. He's gone. He's done.
So it sounds like it would be a tie at this point between normal and superpowers.
Plus, if Sonic is supersonic, then he can probably harden his head spikes into, like, hard spikes. And we all know what happens when Mega Man touches spikes. He's dead. Sonic could literally just hedgehog his way. He could act like a porcupine and just back himself into the blue bomber, and he's done.
Yeah, that would probably not be a pretty sight.
Moonwalk him into his own grave.
So do you ever have time to actually sit back and enjoy a movie or a show?
I don't watch TV or anime as often as I want to. Like, the last anime I saw was Made in Abyss, and that helped by the fact that it was, I think, 12 or 13 episodes long, so we were able to binge it in a single sitting. Mm-hmm. I do have the time to watch shows. The only reason I don't is because I either absorb it or I use it up like lurking online or interacting with fans or, like I said, playing through Etrian Odyssey. I'm definitely more of a gamer than an anime viewer, although I want to be better about that. Like my wife, definitely, she's been trying to force herself to sit down and watch new series that are coming out. So it's not a question of if I have time. It's if I can push myself to actually sit down and watch the series. And I guess that's part of why I'm hoping to get better and better at my career, because even if I don't have the time to watch it on my own, maybe I can find the time to watch the stuff that I've performed in, or even just researching shows so that I can be better prepared when I go in to record for them. That still counts as watching the show.
Yeah.
So, although I do think I have stuff to gain from it just by watching anime in general, because if I watch more anime shows on my own time, then there's an equally good chance that if they get localized for a dub and I get auditions for the characters, I already know the character inside and out. There's going to be a noticeable difference between auditioning for a character who I understand their entire motivation versus I only understand what I can glean from these 5 to 6 audition lines, which usually are just from like episode 1 or 2. So you don't know what they go through.
No, you're right. Until you actually see the entire, go through from beginning to end. Now, have you had a chance to go out and see any movies recently?
Black Panther.
Oh, what do you think about that?
Yeah. I'm super happy that it's getting the attention it deserves. I still want to see Get Out. My wife and I want to see Peter Rabbit, not because of the story, but because of how cute the rabbits are.
Right.
And we are secretly praying for Zootopia 2. Please, Disney. Please.
I could see them actually doing that, though. I mean, I could see them actually doing that, and they're doing Wreck-It Ralph 2. Comes out later this year.
I plan on seeing that too. There's so many good movies coming out, and that's one of the cases where I'm grateful for the friends that I've made since moving to California, like the friends I talk about who aren't involved with voiceover but support me anyway. Because one of them is a big movie buff, so if it were just up to me, I would be too lazy. I'd never get out of the house to actually go see the movies. But because I have these friends that are like, hey dudes, this is coming out soon, when are we going to go see it together? That really helps me get out of the house and spend time with them, and I'm immensely grateful for that.
Nice. I'm trying to think if because they were bringing up a lot of movies this year. I mean, there's tons of Marvel ones coming out. You got Deadpool 2. You've got Avengers coming out.
I'm going to end up seeing all of them. If not, just out of personal interest, because that movie buff friend is going to make sure we go. Yeah. And also because every time I go, I smell that movie theater fake popcorn butter, and I know it's not real butter, but I'm telling you right now, I'm about 2 steps away from just filling up a bucket with the butter and sipping that throughout the movie. I don't care. I came on this earth to live a good life, not a long one.
Right. I'm going to enjoy it once. Oh man. So it sounds like you do enjoy your movies. You get to do what you can watch what you can. You enjoy what you do. I so badly want to see ReZero again when it's out. Partially just because I'm not saying this to imply I don't have any confidence in myself, but when you've spent that long recording on a series and that long having it in your head, you want closure. You want to see the finished product. You want to know if it's as good as you hoped it was going to be. You want to know if all the time and effort you put into it paid off. And even if it's not good, I just want to know. I don't want to be thinking about it anymore. I want to be able to showcase it and see what people think of it. And it kills me to still not hear anything of it and to announce it and not even have an English trailer to show. It hurts. Right. It hurts. And I just want to be, because I'm the person who's like, actions speak louder than words. If something is good, show, don't tell. In terms of storytelling, in terms of your skill set, like the people who brag the most about their skills are probably the ones who don't have a lot to show for it. If they're good, you're going to hear how good they are. And I'm willing to hype this up with people, but I want to be able to just show them instead of tell them, I promise it's going to be good. I promise it's going to be good. I promise I'm going to be good. I hope you're going to enjoy it. I want to be able to say, I know I did a good job. Here's proof. Right. And I feel like it's also too where when the work does show, you can actually learn a lot from, the really about anything. Like, what, I did a great job in this part. I should keep that up.
Just in a matter of talking about the show. Like, I want to be able to, like, if someone says, my God, you sounded so good in that one scene where he's doing that thing, I want to be able to be like, hey, yeah, I remember when I was in the studio for that, and this is what I was doing. Like, this is the method that I used to really insert myself into the scene, to not only acknowledge, but add on to. That is how fandoms grow, is by acknowledging existing content and then adding context or backstory behind it, or even extrapolating it into what if he did this, or what could have happened after this. I want to be able to add to the existing community instead of just pretending,
Right on. Now, just from what I've always watched the original Japanese voices for so long, and then I'd say about 3 years ago, I started to slowly come back to this, to the dub voices, and it's actually sounding much better. Things have gotten improved. Things are sinking more. The amount of emotion in the voices have gotten better at it. So it's interesting. I'm interested to see how, this one coming out. ReZero is going to come out. So, especially when I remember the part about the water. The water one that you did. I'll keep an eye on that.
I'm going to reiterate. This is super hypocritical of me to say, because I'm saying don't do it, followed by, but I absolutely did it anyway because I wanted it to be authentic. It's because I'm stupid. Like, I'm going to tell people right now, I did it because I'm dumb. Don't do that. You can give an authentic performance without putting your actual life in danger. And I should regret that I did something that dangerous, but I'm too spastic to acknowledge how dangerous it was.
So what did the studio? They saw what you were doing. What did they say about it?
Oh no, they were fine with it because I was willing to go with it. If I hurt myself in the process of recording, it's not their fault. But like, a fellow director from a different studio, when I told her about it, went, "What the hell were you thinking?" Like, she's the mama bear of the industry. She cares about her talent and she looks after them. So she's happy that I'm happy, but she was really pissed off that I did it.
Like, why would you do that to yourself?
She was mad. So,
well, she's looking out for us. That's always good.
She is. I'm not mad that she's mad. She has every right to be.
Hey, that's okay. Well, Sean, I appreciate you coming on the show tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Again, thank you so much for being willing to hold it off just a little bit so we could talk about this new project.
No, it sounds really. It's what, the summer this year, supposedly?
Yeah,
sometime?
not just on the level of how meaningful it is to me in terms of life goal, but as fun as Breath of the Wild was, it was very restrictive on what I could talk about. And so there were so many times when people were like, well, how was it like? How was the audition? Or how was the recording process? And I had to say, I can't say anything. I don't know what I'm allowed to say. And with a show like this, obviously I'm not going to give away industry secret info, but as far as being able to talk about what I did for the scenes and my involvement in it, it's so much more open on what I can talk about. And I'm so excited to just boil everything down to its core and get into the nitty-gritty of what it meant for me to be involved with this. And I'm so glad that I can now talk about it.
And it's interesting, though, is that it sounds like, maybe I'm wrong, is with anime shows you can actually talk more about it compared to video games where they're a little bit more restricted. Like, no, you can't say this, you can't do this.
I feel like it might be a combination of, like, with anime shows, it's going to be recorded at a certain anime studio and the process is pretty consistent. Whereas with a game company, a lot of them don't want you to know their recording process because they don't want other companies stealing from it, or they want the focus to be on their products, not their processes. Does that make sense?
I think that makes sense.
Because a show is about the characters. It's about the deliveries. It's about the performance. A game is about the gameplay. And games don't need voiceover to be successful. You look at stuff like Ori and the Blind Forest, or just games that don't use voiceover as a central aspect. And with a show, with an anime, the voiceover is part of it. You can't have the show without the voices. So,
but it's just easy. And it seems
Go
like, games are now becoming more of a performance So you're going to
It
get
is,
more.
and I will say that if game companies felt like they could get away with publishing a game without it needing voiceover, they do that. And so that's why I'm grateful for this career, because the only reason it exists is because people want it. And because companies are convinced that they are necessary in order for them to be marketable to modern audiences. So I'm not kidding when I say my income, my paycheck exists because of the fans. And that's probably why I find it easier for me to like connect and give back to fans than it is to my own colleagues, because at its very core, my colleagues may refer to me to clients, but my job only exists because of the fans. They come first in my mind, and I should give equal attention, but the fans are my everything. They are my lifeblood. I don't need their validation in order to be proud of the work I do, but I still care deeply about how entertained they feel by the products that they consume. And if I'm going to be part of something that they're going to be consuming, I'm going to make damn well sure I make it worth their time.
Nice. That sounds great. Well, I mean, you're doing a great job. I mean, I'm just, from what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing, you really do care about what you do.
I do. I'm going to cry. I'm going to freaking cry. I do. I want nothing more than because the main worry I have is early on in my career, there was a game that I auditioned for that I was spastically enthusiastic about it. The minute I realized that I was auditioning for this instead of just reading about it, the fanboy in me was going nuts. But it kind of took over, where I was fawning so much over the concept of possibly being involved in this game that I wasn't really giving a lot of focus into the professional side of like reading the character specs and understanding the character archetype and delivering audition lines that match the atmosphere. The fanboy took over the professional, and it hurt my performance. It hurt my ability to give reads that weren't exaggerated and fakey. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so even though I've grown as an actor, there's that little nagging voice in the back of my head that says, are you sure that what you gave was authentic, and that the enthusiasm and the attachment you had to the series didn't overtake your ability to be a professional? Because there is a way to be a fan while also being a professional, and that's why I need closure, is because I'm not going to know until the show is out. And it's one of those cases where I have to just trust my director. I have to trust that they'd only pull the best out of me, that I brought my best to the table and they molded it where necessary to give the best possible quality. And so it's gonna bug me until it's out. But all I hope is that the love I had for this character and for this role only added to the quality instead of pulled away. And we'll have to find out. We'll have to see.
Indeed. Sean, again, I appreciate you coming out or getting on your recording. Where's your recording being done again? If you don't mind me asking.
Wait, what'd you say?
Where are you recording tonight?
In my closet. Okay. I'm literally in my closet right now. It's very stuffy in here, and my back is sweating like a frog in summer.
Yeah, I think we should probably end it now. Again, I appreciate it. I'm here for life.
I have already made a home.
No problem.
I've got a mouse friend. His name is Skitters. He finds me peanut butter in the wall cracks.
Thank you again, Sean. Where can people find you at?
They can find me on Twitter at Sonic Mega, on Tumblr at Sonic Mega, on Facebook at Sean Chiplock. Twitter is definitely the best place to follow me in terms of just fan with professional, because any announcements that I make, they always go on Twitter first and then end up on Facebook later. And just in general, if you want to like contact me via DM, I check my Twitter most often. Because I usually reserve my email for business purposes, or if I'm doing like indie projects and stuff like that. So Twitter is definitely the best. At Sonic Mega, it's like Sonic and Mega Man, just without the man. So,
okay. And everybody, you can catch more of us from catwithmonaco.com. You know, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, YouTube, Twitch at catwithmonaco. Thank you again, Sean.
Thank you so much for having me.
No problem.